Las cosas que necesito en la vida ya están aquí. Las cosas que necesito en la vida ya están aquí. I am free, free as a bird now, with my feathered wings. I am free, free as a bird now, with my feathered wings.
Camino Cafe. I am so happy you are here. And as you know, I started this program so that we can have pilgrims come on and talk about their pilgrim stories. And today I am beyond thrilled that we have Alexander John Shaia here with us. And wow, I have to read off all the things about him. He is a pilgrim. He has walked, I don't know, maybe more than 7, 8 times.
Lee, you could just stop right there and just say he's a pilgrim. But
he's got a long list of accomplishments that I really can't ignore. Author, speaker, anthropologist, psychologist, and Camino mentor. And Alexander's book has been on my reading list for quite a while. And I found out that I was going to be interviewing him. And I said, well, I need to read it. And I got to tell everyone, this book should be on every pilgrim's reading list prior to walking. And if you have already walked, you still need to read it. So
thank you.
Please run out this book. And I'm not saying that, folks, because he's on the show today. This book has really touched me, and there have been so many things as we will get into, but I've always thought about Joseph Campbell since my walk and the hero's journey, and finding the information that Alexander has provided in this book has made me even more interested in that. So we'll get to that today. So many things to talk about. I thought maybe, well, first, thank you for being here, Alexander. And I thought we'd first start with your own pilgrimages. And, I always start with, how did you first learn of the Camino? So can we start there? How did you first learn about it?
I don't remember. I remember it was about 1985, so very early. And I was in my doctoral studies. I was in San Francisco, the seat of everything wonderful and wacky. And somebody said to me in class one day, do you know about this walk in Spain? And I said, no. And they told me a little bit about it. And I just, from that moment, it went on the bucket list. Now, it was a long time before the bucket list made it to my feet. So I didn't walk until 2012. 2012 was my first walk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so a very long time of germinating.
Yeah. Well, you said germinating. That was my next question. Do you believe that a seed is planted at that moment when you first hear about it? Is it starts?
It was for me. Now I'm a person that makes decisions intuitively, and I just sort of know yes, no, whatever. And that 1985 yes just took a long time to mature, but I knew that I was going to walk it.
Okay. So then what happened when you actually decided to take that first physical step of the Camino? What lined up that made you be able to do it?
Yeah. So I made this promise to myself that I was going to walk by the time I was 60.
Okay.
Well, I turned 60 and I still hadn't walked, but I thought, all right, well, at least if I walk during the time of my 60th year. So in the summer of 2012, I had all of these speaking engagements that were on my schedule. They had been on the schedule for sometimes up to 2 years. And one by one, they all canceled, delayed, shifted. And I was getting really ticked. I was like, what is going on? And finally, one of my best friends said to me, would you just, start asking the question, what you can do with all this time you've been given rather than think about what's being taken away from you. And I immediately knew the Camino. And so unlike any other, well, maybe not, unlike most people, from the decision to walk to being here was 2 weeks. And I say here because I'm sitting here, in Murcia in Spain at this moment. So in 2 weeks, I got a ticket. I got all my gear together. I tried to do a little bit of more physical exercises. And so October the 1st, 2012, I started up the mountain out of St. John.
Wow. What was it?
What?
Oh, go on.
No, I was just going to say, one person had given me just a piece of gold. And she said, if you can, don't have a firm return date and let your body just do what your body needs to do. Well, I started up that mountain and I only got as far as Orasan that first day, and I was beyond exhausted.
Yeah.
And I walked very slowly for my first week. I remember one day I walked 3 kilometers and I checked to the next albergue and they didn't want to accept me. They said, you haven't walked far enough. And I said, I'm done. Anyway, all these people were passing me that first week, and I was feeling like the old man on the Camino. 3 weeks later, I was passing them because they had raced out of the starting gate with all that adrenaline and all that enthusiasm and really hurt themselves.
Yeah.
And I did it the other way, which was let my body adjust at whatever pace it needed. And after about a week and a half, my body had made that first level of adjustment.
Yeah.
And I was really ready then to take on the rigors of walking a long way every day.
Right. Wow. Yes, that is such great advice, taking it slow, because I do think so many people just rush right out and like you said, injury follows.
Well, because we've got the adrenaline going. I mean, oh my God, that first day up to Orasan and to Roncesvalles is gorgeous. But beware, it has an underside.
Yes.
It can have an underside.
Exactly. So what was it about your 60th year that you said, okay, now's the time? Why was that such a milestone for you that you thought this was the moment?
I think I've always been a very vital and creative person, and age has always just been a number. But I will say that when I got to 59, there was the number 60 started playing on my mind. The other thing is that in the year 2010, my major book was published by Harper. And that whole process of getting the book to Harper, getting the book ready for publication, going before the top media, it was I don't even know the word. Everything conspired for me not to be myself. Everybody was in my head about, you got to do this, you got to say that, you got to go here, and I lost myself. I didn't know who Alexander was anymore, honestly.
Yeah.
And I knew that I needed to do something to regain my deep self, regain my footing.
Yeah.
So the Camino became the way, and I intentionally came over here, and not that I don't think of myself as being a household name by any stretch of the imagination, but I decided before I came that I wasn't going to tell people what I did back home. I wasn't going to mention anything about back home, and I actually used a fictitious name.
Yeah. Okay. What was your fictitious name? Because when I was reading your book, I wondered.
Andrew.
Andrew. Okay. So
Andrew or Andrus.
Why that name?
It just came to me.
Yeah. Okay. That's fascinating.
So I really did. I mean, people, it started to be a game because people sensed that I wasn't being fully honest, but it's like, okay, I don't have to answer your question because you asked it, not in the arrogant way, but I was over here to not talk about back home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
I can only imagine what you're talking about there. In the book that you're referring to is Heart and Mind, the Four Gospel Journey for Radical Transformation. And that has been really well received in the world. And I have not had a chance yet to read that book, but going through your website and reading your main ideas in that book, it sounds amazing, so fascinating. And I then went out and listened to a couple of podcasts where you were interviewed about that book, and I so enjoyed them. So I can imagine that you had a lot of attention during that time, and losing.
I had a lot of attention, and I had a lot of criticism. Any author, if you're going to do something that's fresh, is probably going to get a lot of criticism. At least I hope it's fresh.
Yeah.
But it was a grinder. I couldn't believe where the criticisms were coming from, and sometimes even from very close family and friends. I was like, who's got my back here? Anyway.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So you go and you do this pilgrimage that year in 2012, going with the idea that you needed to find yourself again. At that point, when you stepped foot, did you already have this thought in mind that, your journey is not going to end in Santiago? Was that already in your mind? Or
absolutely,
was it
absolutely.
Kind of came up as you walked?
Going back to my days in college, my undergraduate was anthropology, and anthropology has always been very, very close to my heart. And the area of study were worldwide rites of initiation or rites of passage. And I already learned from that material, and then also from Joseph Campbell, that coming back from the rite of passage is the critical moment. Mm. And as Campbell would say, it's the most critical moment, but people don't talk about it. The ancients knew how to bring you back home. And they knew that if they didn't bring you back home in a certain way, that the journey was sort of stillborn. Because you might get the insight, you might quote unquote get the gift, but going through the trials and obstacles to integrate that back into your life that actually serves you is a whole new journey. So I already knew that this probably was going to be a major rite of passage for my life. Mm-hmm. I knew that I was sort of looking at sort of the second half of my life, or the latter half of my professional life. And I knew that when I got to the water's edge, I knew that I was coming all the way to the ocean. I wasn't stopping at Santiago. I knew when I got to the water's edge that would be a significant moment, and that I would, at that moment, begin to ask myself why I had done this. Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing is, like, I knew that I didn't really know why I was doing this. And I knew that I probably wasn't going to know until very late in my walking. So there were so many people I was walking with who were putting a lot of pressure on themselves, like first day, second day out, gotta know why I'm doing this. Actually, I think most people discover later in the walking what was the deep reason that they were called to do it.
Yes, I totally agree. And you've heard the quote, the Camino doesn't give you what you seek, it gives you what you need. Right,
exactly.
Right.
And so a lot of what I'm telling you right now about my journey is later reflection on it. Mm-hmm. I had all the anthropology knowledge about a rite of initiation or a rite of passage. I knew I was spent. I knew I was just emotionally, intellectually spent. But after I finished walking, then the pieces of the whole journey started to fit together and make sense.
Mm. So you've walked numerous times since. When was the next pilgrimage? So you did that one in 2012. When did you walk the second time?
2015.
2015. And so was that a journey still at that point? Did you take people on that one, or was that a solo one for yourself?
No, I did take some people. That was the first year that I took people.
Okay.
I can look back now and say I really needed that 2015 walk for myself. I think it was a pretty good mentor, but I was still so much in my own Camino that there wasn't as much space as I have now to not be in my Camino and to be there for somebody else. The 2015 Camino in some ways finished the 2012 Camino.
Oh, okay. So many questions there. So, I know a lot of listeners and followers that would like to lead Camino tours. And when I was researching for our call, I was amazed that you take people, I think, was it for 60 days?
I do.
Okay, so I'm a yoga teacher, so I think a lot about holding space for people. And I was literally like bowing down, like thinking, how are you holding space for 60 days for people? Because I do believe if I were a Camino leader that I too would be experiencing some form of a Camino. So I wonder if you could just maybe speak to that for folks that are listening that are planning on maybe accompanying folks as a mentor. How do you hold that space while you too are experiencing Camino-like things happening for yourself?
I've gotten better and better at it with each year because, after 2015 and certainly by 2017, I had really come to the place in myself where this is not my Camino. Mm-hmm. This is their Camino, and I'm holding the space for them. And I love it. And I have my own experience of the Camino, and I have my own knowledge of all the places that we walk by and places that we may be staying that helps me be more present for them. But it was a maturing process to realize that after a while, truly, I'm not a pilgrim anymore. I'm a pilgrim mentor, and I can clear out my own Camino walk and really be there more for where they are.
What's it like for you to experience a Camino with people as they're going through it? What do you feel in your heart as you're observing the transformations that you're seeing as they walk, as well as, because I think you continue to work with them after they're home. What does it feel like to see all of that?
The Camino does not end the day you stop walking. It's really gratifying. It's so incredibly gift to see people, to see the relaxation in their face, to see a deeper smile come, to be with them in the tears and the pain, and to know that what we do here is just a small mirror of the rest of life. I do love that image that what we're all doing is walking each other home, and that's what I get to do for a few precious days with these pilgrims.
Around us, we're just walking each other home.
Right.
Yeah.
And also to know, I now know that I don't get as wrapped up in when they get really upset, because I know that it's all part of the journey. I mean, I want to walk with them, and I'm always caring. But when they're in a point of real questioning and doubt, and emotional upset, I can almost, to me, I know that the next day or two, they're going to get some incredible gift. So it's easier for me to just be with them and watch them learn about this rhythm to life, that there's doubt, there's angst, and then in a very short couple of days, if you just keep walking, you get the other side. And to see the light bulbs turn on for people, to begin to have them experience that they can trust that. And I hope that they can trust it here on the Camino, so they can go home and trust it wherever they are.
Yes, and that must make you a fantastic guide, because you can hold that space to know that, yeah, you're in pain right now, but the gifts are coming.
Yeah.
You had a quote that go on.
Well, from my psychological work, and I'm really I'm sorry that I learned it in psychology rather than spirituality, but I'm really grateful that I learned it. And that is that if you can hold an adequate space for someone, doesn't have to be perfect, but an adequate space for them, there's something deep in them that knows exactly what to do.
Yeah. We all have the answers deep within.
We do.
Yeah. You repeat this a couple of times in your book, and I've actually used it as a mantra for myself since reading your book, and that is, there is time, there is time. So since I'm so lucky to be interviewing the author, could you talk about that a little bit more? Like what's your, when you write that or you guide people telling them that, where's that coming from? And can you elaborate on it a bit?
I mean, philosophically, we know that every moment is an eternal now. But the gift of being in Spain, which has a slower pace of life in general, and then you come over here, you leave your schedules behind. In some ways, you leave your identity behind, and you fall into this: get up every morning, maybe have a café con leche, put on your pack and walk. And the rhythm of that brings you home to yourself, brings you home to just now. And most people don't realize how much that's affected them until they leave here. And they get off the train or get off the plane and suddenly are met with all the duties back home that just come rushing. But I want people, the reason that I do 60 days is because psychologically, we say it takes about 60 days of a routine to make it a habit.
Yeah.
And I want people to have taken those first steps into making Camino life a habit for everyday life.
Mm.
And part of that is, don't let yourself collapse into the rat race of time. There is time, there is time, there is time. And just today, I woke up this morning to a security alert about a password and has spent a few hours on the phone with my credit card company and my bank, et cetera, trying to figure out what happened. And then I had to step away and remind myself, there's time, there is time, there is time. And to look away from the screen.
There is time.
There's time.
There's time. I think I felt even during my own Camino a pressure to heal, right? And I wish I would have had that mantra of there is time, that's going to happen with time. Yeah. You know, I felt like I could control that, right? Like I'm going to myself. It's going to happen within this time. But I think having that permission, the intention of knowing that there is time really just opens up this beautiful space. And, you know, I'm using it again as I'm going through the visa process. There's time.
Oh, absolutely. Having, as you know, having just completed the first year visa for Spain, there is time.
I wanted to share with everyone from your book on page 49. And again, the book is Returning from Camino. And you start off, once the walk has ended, you have a couple of quotes. The way has no end, but our steps, yes. And then you talk about the turnaround place. And if you
I want to say, that was on a wall as I walked, and I with no author ascribed to that saying, but I love it.
Me too, because it's so true, right? The way has no end, but our steps, yes.
Yes.
And I mean, you're going to do that in a lot of ways, right? Our entire life, right? But you go on, and I don't know if you have your book. You're welcome to read it if you would rather read it if you have your book handy. But I was just going to read the turnaround place. I love the 2 short paragraphs, but I just love this part. And then I want to just have you elaborate a little bit more on it. So if you have your book, you're welcome to read it, or I can read it, whatever you would like.
Oh, so I have my book right here, but which page? Which page?
49.
Okay.
And just those first 2 right under a turnaround place.
Wherever it is that you end your walk westward, Santiago, Festero, Muxia, or another place, this location is your turnaround place. This place is both an ending and a beginning. It completes the westward journey, and it's also the start of the Camino's second half, the journey home. It's therefore a place for reflection, rest, and celebration on all that the Camino has been to date. A place for anticipation of what's to come as you return home. And a place of some bewilderment as you say goodbye to the ever-present yellow arrows pointing westward, and perhaps begin to wonder, what's my direction now?
Goosebumps when I read it, bigger goosebumps now hearing you actually read it. So let's talk about how did the book come into being, and how did, when did you know that I have to write this book?
I knew I had to write it shortly after I arrived back in the States in 2012. And I knew I had to write it for 2 reasons. First, I was very fortunate in 2012 for the little physical preparation that I had. I had the usual bumps and bruises and a few blisters, not even that many. I'm standing at the Madrid airport, and I put my backpack in a duffel bag, which I carried the duffel bag to put my backpack in so I could check it. And I went to lift it up onto the belt at the airline counter, and my shoulder popped. And I spent the next 5 weeks, even with pain medicine, in agony. And it was a gift. I mean, I don't want to repeat it, but it slowed me down. I couldn't come home and resume my usual habitual pace. And as I laid there, I began to think about, in the ancient rites of initiation, this would be called a sacred wound. And the sacred wound has in it a gift. And your obligation is to find the gift in the wound if you're going to make the return. And I really found that the gift for me was I came back home with all this energy, a lot more energy than I had answers. And I didn't know what exactly my next step was going to be, but I knew that I needed time to figure it out. And then I started, as I'm laying in bed, I started hearing from all my Camino friends who were home and they were depressed. I have a friend in the UK who he said he went home and he went to bed for five months. He was so bewildered and paralyzed because he had experienced himself in a way on the Camino and he didn't know how to bring it home. And in fact, was afraid that there wasn't going to be a way to bring it home. And other people went home and got really upset because they thought they needed the answer. At that point, they needed the answer. And I had the gift from my psychological and anthropological work to know that coming home was going to be bewilderment time, that I wasn't going to have the final answer, but that I was going to have a lot of new thought and perhaps a lot of new energy. to go through a process of trial and error to find out how to serve what I had realized while I was walking.
Wow. And
the 5 weeks with my own shoulder and then beginning to hear from my friends, I was like, somebody, my first thought was, somebody needs to write a book about coming home from the Camino.
Somebody.
And then I realized, maybe that's me.
Well, I tell you, it is a gift to the Camino family. I think this book, because, I often, when I'm reading, the questions that are posted in the Facebook groups and questions that I get, I think when we first think about starting off on Camino, we are so sometimes preoccupied with either the physicality, how am I going to prevent a blister, or equipment, right? And those things are important, but there's going to be something much bigger that's going to take place. And I think we need to be talking more about this, and we need to be helping people. So like you say, when your friend comes home, and maybe that is part of his journey, he had to be in bed, but it would be nice to have some way to help them alleviate a little bit of that pain.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's why in the book I start before you go, because I want people to have have a different expectation of themselves as they walk, which eases the coming home so much. Yeah. And secondly, to begin to talk to friends and family about what they're going to do when you come home. I've had so many of my friends say, my friends and family planned this big party for me when I got home, and I needed a couple of days, or I needed a few weeks before I was ready to be in that sort of a celebratory moment. Yes. People give me great ideas now. So another set of friends, a husband and wife, he's walked the Camino a couple of times. And now when he comes home, she meets him in a park that's near their house. And they sit in the park and talk about each other's life. He wants to know about what's happened with all the time that he's been gone. She wants to know. And there's something about not doing that in the house, because as soon as you walk in the door of the house, there's the stack of mail, there's the bills, there's all the usual habitual stuff. Just to give yourself that clear other space to sit and be present is just small things that can make a big difference.
Yes, I totally agree. And I was just thinking, you having that injury at the airport, sorry to hear that happened, first off, but it looks like you've healed from it.
Yes.
I can't even imagine what that felt like to think, hey, I just walked over 500 miles successfully, rocking it at age 60. And then you go and do something so simple that you do all the time, and then this happens. But after hearing your story, had you gone back to your life as it was at that point, you might have gone right back on the speaking circuit. You might have, and this book might not have been born, or at least been born in that time frame, because you would have been busy back to real life.
Exactly. I who knows? I don't know for certain, but I doubt that without that injury, this book would have come.
So wow, so many things I want to talk to you about. Let's talk a little bit about Joseph Campbell. So I quote him all the time in yoga classes, and think about this hero's journey. And so one question I had for you is, I know he traveled a lot in his lifetime. Did he ever, as far as you're aware, did he ever take a formal pilgrimage of any sort?
Not that I'm aware of. No. I mean, he personally taught me in these advanced seminars at the University of Notre Dame in the mid-1970s, before Joseph Campbell was Joseph Campbell. I mean, before he had any notoriety whatsoever. He never, if he did a pilgrimage, he never talked about it, at least in terms of an outer pilgrimage. But he, during the 1930s, after college, he didn't know what to do. And he went and lived in a wood cabin in upstate New York for like 3 or 4 years and just read world literature. And that's where he had his insight. And then he came back from that to the everyday world and didn't know what he was going to do, and then was offered a job teaching literature at Sarah Lawrence College. And then as they saw the brilliance of his mind and his own concepts, they said to him, teach the class you want to teach. So he didn't walk the outer pilgrimage in that way, but he definitely walked the inner pilgrimage.
Yeah. Do you think, did you ever hear him refer to, did he think his life was a pilgrimage, like the entirety of his life? Did he ever speak to that in your presence?
No, not in the coursework that I did with them. But I think if you look at that Bill Moyers set of interviews, and I don't think people realize that those interviews were taped just a few months before he died. And then when they aired, it was about 6 months after he died. I think you get the sense of the pilgrimage of his life from those interviews.
I was listening to another podcast that you were on, and you were talking about how, we have this hero's journey, but that it's not just one journey. It's not this linear thing, right? We've got other journeys going on simultaneously. So I wonder if you could kind of speak to that, because I think that does speak a little bit maybe to the Camino, in that you go and you take this rite of passage, but your life didn't stop back home. And there's still things you are going to have to go back home and deal with that are somewhere in those 4 stages. So I just wondered if you could speak to that.
Well, it's, as Campbell would say, the reason that you have a rite of passage is not one and done. A rite of passage is your life in miniature for you to learn about yourself and how you're going to face these places in your life over and over and over again. And so the Camino is not a one and done experience, but if you mine it, it will teach you about yourself. It will teach you about your gifts. It will teach you about how you experience stress. It will teach you about your doubts. It will teach you about your joys, etc. And that teaching will inform every one of those moments for the rest of your life. So when he talked about the 4 parts or the 4 places on the hero's journey, he didn't see those as ta-dum, 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 sort of a linear, sequential, you do this and it's over. He saw those as 4 places in us that we are constantly going around in. And I like to talk about, in my professional life, I'm in a certain place on the journey. In my personal life, I'm in a certain place on the journey. With my life with my partner, I'm in a certain place on the journey. So it's how easy it would be if it was just all at once. And we know what the next step is, the next step, but it's sort of all together at once.
Yes, very fascinating. I was thinking about, I mean, obviously we don't have nearly enough time to talk about the entire book, but near the end, you talk about, you give really the recommendations of making the Camino a rite of passage. And I think what you have maybe 9 steps.
Yeah.
But one of them, number 6, was tell and retell the story of your Camino. And when I read that, it so resonated with me as a pilgrim, because, I haven't stopped talking about this pilgrimage of mine since the day I left. And one of the reasons I started this podcast is because I started noticing that, family, they don't necessarily understand what happens on the Camino, people that don't go, but I have an intense need to tell this story. And as I met pilgrims I was walking with, and as I, to this day when I'm interviewing pilgrims, I sense the need to share this story. So can we talk a little bit about what's going on there? Why do we want to talk about this? And sometimes people apologize to me that they want to talk about it so much. And I just wonder if you could give everybody that permission and incentive or whatever, that it's okay to talk about it, that you actually encourage it.
Well, I'm going to say a couple of things. Absolutely, I encourage it. You talk about this story as much as you want, as much as you need, because the because the way that we talk about it, we're trying to own it. There's a part of ourselves that we're integrating, or a lesson that we're integrating as we keep telling the story over and over again. But I also want to say, please don't tell the story to everyone. There, with the pilgrims that walk with me, as we get towards where we stop, where our turnaround place is, I'm like, okay, now, what are the travel log stories you want to tell when you get home? And have those about the museums, the architecture, the food. That's what most people want. And then there are the people who are ready and really want to hear the deeper story. Tell them the deeper story and treasure that they want to hear that, but recognize that that's not the story for everybody. Because there will be those people who you'll try to tell the deeper story to, and they can't take it in. And when that happens, they're going to try to take the story away from you in some way, that by trying to make you less than, or dismissing you, or saying it's not that important or whatever, because the story is touching them in a place where they might need to grow and they're not ready to begin.
Yes.
And that's okay. It's okay. We all start where we start. But please don't keep going back to those people trying to tell them the story. They can't hear it. Find and know the people who want to hear the story. And that may largely be other pilgrims. And that's great. And have that good friend or two who are willing to hear the story 30 times, 40 times, because they know that you're learning something by telling it again. And also, if they're a really good listener, they'll be able to reflect back to you how the story is changing. And how the story is changing is how you're changing. And that's really important to be able to see.
Yes, absolutely. You're right. I think when sometimes we tell our family and our friends about it, they want to hear the beach vacation story of our trip, right? They want to see the pictures of the cathedral, hear about what we ate, whatever, but they're not necessarily interested in hearing the deeper transformation. And even as a pilgrim, that can kind of leave you hanging.
I have a friend, I'm not going to name. This person actually believes I have never walked the Camino. This person believes I have come to Spain, checked into a spa, and then come home and invented all these stories. They will not believe I actually walk.
Really?
Absolutely. Anyway, and it's a person in my family, and I used to get really upset about it, and now I just okay,
right.
Let it be, but don't give your story, which is a jewel, to everyone. Give it to those who are ready in some ways to receive it and reflect it back.
Yes. I was thinking as I was reading that part of your book, and now even more so hearing you talk about this, that when I was interviewed for Dan Mullen's interview podcast, I was so nervous to tell my story, but it was fascinating to me, Alexander, when I listened to the podcast, it was so healing for me to hear me telling my story in my own voice. I wonder if you have that experience when you hear yourself talk about things.
I do, and I don't. Now I more tell my story to help the pilgrims who are walking with me to understand their own story. But every time I tell the story, the energy comes rushing back.
I feel,
and I realize I'm in a very privileged moment in my life. Here I am sitting literally on the Camino at the edge of the Atlantic Sea. And I get to, just as we've been talking, pilgrims are walking by with their backpacks and the shells hanging off the back. And every pilgrim I see with the shell in their backpack, the energy rushes.
I feel that every time I do a podcast interview. The energy is so strong from the Camino. Oh.
There are very few true rites of passage. And I don't mean everybody who walks the Camino wants a rite of passage. But if you do, there are very few true rites of passage left in the West, because for a true rite of passage, you cannot know the end point. You cannot know the result. You've got to be open. I mean, and I said, you've got to be open to be disappointed. And I mean, you've got to be open to the fact you may come to Spain and get hurt. You may come to Spain and get sick and not be able to walk as far as you thought you were. What all of that uncertainty is an essential element of a true rite of passage.
Yes. Yeah, I think you have a quote from Joseph Campbell about that. What is it? If the path before you is clear, you're probably on someone else's.
Yes.
Right? We have to expect the obstacles. And I think that I had forgotten that prior to my Camino. I thought my life was just going to be smooth. And I feel like you're right about the rite of passage. I think and maybe that's why it's so powerful for so many of us.
I mean, I've worked for many years for the Catholic Church. The problem with most church rituals is they're performa. They're already wrapped up, and we've got the celebration planned at the end. And now we're doing the same thing with young boys and young girls, trying to give them a passage to adulthood, where it's like we've got a weekend where we're going to pull out some symbols and give them a party. That's beautiful. It's a beautiful moment.
Right.
It's not a rite of passage.
No, not at all.
No. The ability to
I think
fail.
the Camino provides.
The ability to fail is an essential to a rite of passage.
Yeah. Yes. So true, right? And I think when you walk the Camino, it gives you this chance to realize you can be the hero of your own story. But that takes a lot of work and a lot of time.
It does.
One thing I'm always fascinated, we'll just do a few more minutes if it's okay with you. I wonder what your perspective.
I love this. But this is like double chocolate, which is the very best thing in the world to me. So go for it.
I wonder what calls us to go back, because there are very few. I can only think of one person I've interviewed that has said to me, "Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever do that again." And they did have a transformation. When they tell their story. The majority of people I speak to really want to get back. So that's my first question: is what makes us want to go back?
I mean, I don't know. Here are my guesses. I think that the Camino is offering a way to see life, which is so unusual in the West and is so needed, that it's like going back to boot camp. We need to keep returning till, in some ways, we fully integrate the lesson. I think something like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. So you're getting ready to take a group, and when do you guys step off?
September the 3rd.
Okay. And where will you be starting for this one?
Well, we gather in Pamplona.
Okay.
And we go up to a village up in the Aragon, which are the Spanish Pyrenees. We don't start in Saint Jean. We do start in the Pyrenees, but we start on a different. It's the Jaca Camino.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that one. Okay.
And I go up there because we've got this incredible little lodge, and we have a 4-day retreat. And I want people to decompress. I want people to get over jet lag, and I want people to do some intentional work about calling in their family member, their ancestor, who they want to walk with them. I want them to write the letter at this moment, what do I think this Camino is going to be about? Because I want them to remember when we get to the turnaround place, what they thought it was going to be about has changed. But if you haven't captured it at the beginning, you really aren't aware how much it's changed.
Yes.
So we start way up in the Spanish Pyrenees, and then we start walking. And we have a 3-day retreat in the middle, just past Leon. And then we come here outside of Muxia and have a 5-day retreat at the end, preparing to get back on that plane or train or wherever and go back to life's usual schedule.
Oh my goodness. I am so envious of the people that are getting to go with you. I mean, that sounds like just such a beautiful way to walk, and to have you there as a mentor. And wow. Okay. So I'm guessing that one is sold out. I don't know if there's still a chance that anyone could still jump in on that.
No. We are accepting applications for 2022, which again is from early September to early November.
So for 2022, they could still
next year. We finished the itinerary and it's all booked, and now we're looking at the applications that are coming in.
Okay. And do they apply on your website?
Yes, if you go on the website, there's a link to the application. And then after the application, we have a couple of phone calls and discernment moment to make sure it's a yes for both of us.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so everyone, I will have the link to Alexander's website so you can check that out. What led you, Alexander, do you think, I know in 2012, I don't think that you knew that you were going to someday be a Camino mentor and be leading this Camino journey for folks. Did you ever see that coming in 2012? How did that come about?
All of my work since college has been offering people some form of transformation. Okay. And there are just so few places in the Western world where that's a physical activity. Mm-hmm. And after all my years of being a therapist, psychologist sitting in the office, I have seen people grow deeper and more in 60 days walking than happened in that amount of time in the office. So it's wonderful to be able to give people a deep sense of serenity.
I have a therapist friend who is actually my Camino mentor, and she has talked about something, I don't want to misquote her, but like basically walking a Camino is like 10 years of therapy, being in the therapist's couch. What is it in your mind why does the combination of walking and processing what we do on the Camino, why is that such a good marriage of activity that in your mind, you've seen people transform, you think maybe, I don't want to say quicker, but deeper?
Yeah, so here's where the whole psychological field is moving. The knowing center in our bodies is not just in our brains, it's in every cell of the body. Mm. And when you are moving every cell of the body in nature, in a place which is away from a lot of technology, spirit, life, whatever name you have for that greater power, has more an opportunity to help you see things that you need to grow through. Yes. And here you've got a whole community around you saying, yes, go for it.
Yeah. It's that feeling everybody walking the same direction. And I wonder too, the power of all of those prayers that have been said on this ancient path before us, right? Our ancestral connections. I feel an energy when I'm on the path.
Totally. And this is not, there is a Christian element to this pilgrimage, certainly. Right. But as an anthropologist, we know that this journey has been made since 6,000 BCE and maybe older. This is the most ancient pilgrimage in the West, and perhaps the most walked pilgrimage in the West. And all of those people have left their sweat and their knowing in this land. And I believe also their spirit. So you may be walking by yourself, but you're not walking alone.
You may be walking by yourself, but you're not walking alone. Yes. I always think when someone tells me, oh, I just want to walk it. I'm not there for that spiritual stuff. I'm not, it's just an athletic endeavor for me. And I'm like, okay. But I think something will touch you. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't need to know why you're walking, in whatever way you come to walk, great. I'm willing to bet you that you'll find a little bit more than you thought you were going to get.
Yes, I agree. You're on the lovely coast of Shaia, also envious of that right now. So I imagine you've been having time to write and do all the things that you love, in addition to the Camino. So do we have a new book in the works? Is there something that we can look forward to reading next?
Yes, there are many new books in the work. The one that's closest is called The 13 Days of Christmas, The Wonder and Awe of Birth. And what I've come to understand is that Christianity has made, quote unquote, the 13 days of Christmas. Each of those 13 days is a direct corollary to the 13 days of the Celtic winter solstice festival. And we took the Celtic understanding of that day and found the Christian element of the same story.
So that's going to be the next book.
That's the next book, which I had hoped would be out this fall, but I had surgery this year and it's really delayed me. So most likely it's going to be out about this time next year.
Okay. All right.
It's done. It's a matter now of the publisher and all the finishing elements.
All right. Well, please let us know when it's published in case I miss the announcement. I want to make sure to the community.
Go to my website, sign up for the newsletter.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. Okay, I'll make sure I put a specific link for that in the show notes as well. So I'm just going to hold up again. Required reading, Pilgrims, please do yourself the favor of reading this before you go. You will not regret it. I can't recommend it enough. And Alexander, this discussion with you today has been so healing for me and so inspiring. It's a real honor to be able to speak to you today, and I hope to meet you someday. And please,
Lee, likewise.
Thank you so much.
There's nothing I look forward to more than just sitting down pilgrim to pilgrim and talking.
Yes.
Thank you.
The Camino family.
Thank you, everyone. Utreya y Suizia.
Yes. Well, if you'll stay on, Alexander, just for a second, and we'll say goodbye. But I just want to say goodbye to all our watchers and our listeners. Thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to talk about the Camino and hearing our stories. And just know that I'm anxious to hear your stories. So if you're out there walking right now, contact me. I would love to hear about it. I love interviewing pilgrims, as you know. It keeps my own Camino essence alive, and I want to help you do the same. So please reach out. If you're out walking, Buen Camino.
Las cosas que necesito en la vida ya están aquí. Las cosas que necesito en la vida ya están aquí. I am free as a bird now, with my feathered wings. I am free as a bird now, with my feathered